start, Arjun has a question about arati.
It's not streaming yet.
It says it is live. It says it's live here.
I don't. Okay, now I can see.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So Arjun?
Okay. This one.
Yeah, probably a silly question, but with the exception of the Namo Namo part of Handana,
Yeah.
most of the artist songs are very slow, there's no joy, no energy.
Oh,
I feel it's slow. Why is it like that?
okay. Well, you see, it's not that it's lacking joy, it's full of joy, but it's a deep, profound joy. It's not an excited joy. But of course, the kanana, it gradually builds up because we start, of course, we don't have the musicians, no? Usually in our ashramas where there are musicians, traditionally, the song is sung to the accompaniment of bakawaj. You know the bakawaj? It's a traditional in Bengali instrument with on the left side, two-headed drum like a mridanga, except the left head, which is the low sounding drum, has, instead of a kind of black dot like mostly the drums have, you take whole wheat flour, make dough out of it, just like you'd use for chapatis. You take that dough and you put it on the head of the drum, and it's amazing. It gives a very deep sound that shakes you deep inside, and it's so it's gambhir is the term that we use in the gambhir bhav, the mood of profound antarmukh means the inner, the profound sense of deep, going deep within. So that's why the Swami Vivekananda composed this hymn, and he composed the melody also. And actually, I heard that when he first composed it, between each verse, there was Namo Namo Prabhu. And then the brother said, Swamiji, it takes too long to sing it like that. So then they put the Namo Namo at the end, after those 8 verses. But I think what will help is if you study, or we can take that up as a study, though probably not tonight, to go through each verse, because if you understand the meaning, that's the thing. If it's just words that you don't understand the meaning, then true, it can be a little dry. What am I singing? But if you understand the meaning, then it's very profound. And so it brings a deep kind of peaceful joy, not an excited joy. But then it actually, at Belar Mutt, the way they sing the 8 verses through, slow as we do, probably even slower, but with the Pakawaj and with the Kanjani, and then they start back at verse number 1, double speed. They take the whole thing to double speed and sing the whole 8 verses again, double speed. And then they do Namo Namo, and by then it's going fast, and the second time they do Namo Namo, it's really rocking, it's going really fast. And the chamar is going, and all that, and so it ends in a real crescendo. But true, then it comes back to this serious mood of Om Ring Ritang. They're both love songs, actually. The first song, we call them evening prayer, but it's a prayer of praise. It's describing Sri Ramakrishna as a glorious being who breaks our bondages. And then Om Ring Ritang is a beautiful hymn of seeking refuge. What's the 4th line? Tasmat Tvam Eva Sharanam. Therefore, Tasmat Tvam, you, Eva, only, Sharanam, refuge. Therefore, you are my only refuge. Who are you? Dina Bandhu, O friend of the lowly. Dina Bandhu is friend of the lowly, and Dina Bandho means, O friend of the lowly. So it's a call from the heart that, oh my dear, oh my Lord, thou who art the friend of the lowly and the lost, I have no refuge here. Thou art my only refuge. I take refuge in you. So it's that kind of mood. So if you know the meaning of the words, then it becomes very deep and profound. And so Om Ring Ritang also describes the glories. But see, it says basically it admits that we are unable to remember God constantly. We are unable to spiritualize our life fully. So seeing our own limitations, what other option do we have? We take refuge. We go for refuge. So that's the idea behind Om Ring Ritam. And then Sarvamangala Mangala, also the 3 verses to Divine Mother, also is beautiful and very serene and deep mood it creates. These are 3 of the verses from the Chandi, 3 of the most well-known verses, these 3 verses. And then of course here we add, which many centers they add, this beautiful hymn by Swami Abhedananda, composed to Holy Mother, which has both, it starts out fast, then it has the in-between, it has this slow part, and then again the faster part. So true, it's a good question. That's a good subject of study we can take up, that going through each line and understanding the meaning. That will. Hi, anybody watching? Two people. Okay, yeah, we did it for, I don't remember her name, the mother who asked us, please stream it. So for you, we're doing it. All right. So shall we have a reading from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna? We have this traditional prayer, this verse which we start with from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Gopi Gita. And the gopis are singing to Sri Krishna. He's disappeared from their view, and they're longing to see him. And they sing this hymn, of which one of the verses is this. Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Shravana Mangalam Srimadasatam Bhuvigrananti Bhuridadana. I'll read a translation. O Lord, the nectar of your words gives life to those scorched by the world. Those words, which have been declared by the knowers of truth, dispel our ignorance. The very hearing of them is beneficial and auspicious. Your words are beautiful, pleasing to the ear, pleasing to the heart. They are inexhaustible in the benefit they confer. Those who recount them on earth are the givers of the highest and the best. Not sure who did the translation. It's a little bit, you can say, interpretive translation, poetic translation. But this Tava Katha Amritam. Amritam, that nectar. Your words are like nectar. Just to hear them, Shravana Mangalam is most auspicious. To hear them, Shravana is Mangalam, most auspicious. So let's see what auspicious words Sri Ramakrishna gives to us today. And I am, since we were really busy today, I didn't look ahead of time. So we're just going to see where we are. Okay. There's a stage marker at chapter 35 at the Star Theatre 2. Sunday, December 14, 1884. Star Theatre was a well-known theatre in Calcutta. Sri Ramakrishna went many times. Girish Ghosh, perhaps he was one of the owners of the theatre, or he put all his plays there. He put on his plays there at the Star Theatre. By the by, this doesn't have to be a formal discourse or something. If you have any questions, Arjun or anybody else, feel free to ask them while we're going along. That'll be nice. So, Sri Ramakrishna arrived at the Star Theatre on Beedon Street in Calcutta to see a play about the life of Prahlad. M. Baburam, Narayan, and other devotees were with him. The hall was brightly lighted. The play had not yet begun. The master was seated in a box, talking with Girish. The master smiling. Ah, you have written nice plays. Girish. But sir, how little I assimilate. I just write. Master. No, you assimilate a great deal. The other day I said to you that no one could sketch a divine character unless he had love of God in his heart. Girish was a very gifted playwright. He wrote many plays on spiritual subjects. And he also wrote other plays. But these beautiful spiritual subjects. And Sri Ramakrishna loved them. He loved his plays. And he would go into ecstasy seeing the plays. Yes, one needs to assimilate spiritual ideas. I went to Keshav's house to see the play Nava Vrindavan. I saw a deputy magistrate there who earned 800 rupees a month. Everyone said that he was a very learned man, but I found him restless because of a boy, his son. He was very anxious to find a good seat for the boy. He paid no attention to the spiritual conversation of the players. The boy was pestering him with questions. Father, what is this? What is that? He was extremely busy with the boy. You see, he merely read books, but he didn't assimilate their ideas. Well, it seems like he's a little harsh, isn't he, on this poor father who's looking after his son and trying to give his son a good experience. But I guess Sri Ramakrishna was looking at, see, he earned so much money, and he's called such a scholar, but he doesn't have devotion. If he genuinely had devotion, he would take his son on his lap and say, son, I'll tell you later, watch the play. And see the Nava Vrindavan, that is probably about Chaitanya Deva. See the spiritual talk going on, hear that spiritual talk and get inspired. But he hadn't assimilated it. It was all just lip deep. Girish. I often ask myself, why bother about the theater anymore? Master. No, let things be as they are. People will learn much from your plays. Moreover, Sri Ramakrishna surely knew that Girish was not fit to become a full-fledged monk and wander about. And he had his own part to play in Sri Ramakrishna's in Ramakrishna's Leela, and to write these plays and to demonstrate how to surrender fully, to how to give God your power of attorney. That was Girish's speciality, what he demonstrated for the rest of us. The performance began. Prahlada was seen entering the schoolroom as a student. At the sight of him, Sri Ramakrishna uttered once or twice the word Prahlada, Prahlad, and went into samadhi. So he's not going to see much of the play. He would get so inspired seeing the actor portraying. It goes back. Sri Ramakrishna himself played in he was an actor from a very young age in the Shivaratri when he was, how old was he? 6 or 7 or something like that. There was a Shivaratri, and all night long Shivaratri goes. So how to stay awake? So the villagers, they would put on performances, and the villagers themselves would act in the performances. And Sri Ramakrishna was, and the actor who was to play the role of Shiva fell sick at the last minute, maybe fasting too much or who knows what. So couldn't play the role. So they thought, well, who would be good? Oh, Gadai. Let's call Gadai. He can do it. He'll do a good job. So at first he didn't want to, because he wanted to do his own Shiva Puja and all that in the mango grove, I think. But then it was told him, look, if you're playing the role of Shiva, you'll be thinking of Shiva all the time. That's worshipping Shiva. So he agreed, and they dressed him up with matted locks and tiger skin, not a real tiger skin, of course. And he came out on the stage, and everybody was stunned to see how he looked really like a miniature Shiva standing there. And then, what about his lines? What about the rest of the play? Nothing. He stood there in ecstasy, completely absorbed in the thought of Shiva, and he couldn't do anything more. So it caused quite a commotion, and only much after a long time did he come back to his normal state of mind. But he had been in great joy. It's not a state of unconsciousness, state of superconsciousness. So that was his first experience acting as in a formal play. But with his friends, they would enact the different dramas. They would see the dramas played, the wandering troops who, there were no movies, right? No, none of that stuff. So there would be wandering troops of actors who would come to a village and they'd set up for a few days and they'd put on a few plays and the villagers would give them some money and then they'd go on to the next village. And so Sri Ramakrishna, and most often, very often these plays would have the spiritual themes. So Sri Ramakrishna would absorb, as a young boy, he would absorb these, and then he and his friends would go and put on the same plays in the mango orchard, in their play. And Sri Ramakrishna would remember the songs and teach them the songs and all of that. So he's the patron saint of theater in Bengal. Any theater you go to, in the green room, there'll be a photograph of Sri Ramakrishna there, because he started with Girish's theater and with the actors there and the actresses.
I think maybe, so now it seems not, I don't know, even now, having like godmen visit theater, etc., I don't think that happens very often, and this was like 150 years ago.
Right, it's considered a little, I don't go to the movie theaters generally, though I went once to a documentary about on a sort of religious theme, but ordinarily we don't go to theaters, those things, true. The monks and, right, very good point. Ramakrishna, but he was beyond, you know, the conventions, society conventions meant nothing for him.
Even I think there's some actresses, right, female in there, and they would not be looked upon by the society as very good.
Right.
But Sri Ramakrishna didn't matter to him.
Right.
And considering it was that day and age when there were such strict rules, boundaries, castes, and gender.
All right. During another scene, Sri Ramakrishna wept to see Prahlada under an elephant's feet. Of course, see, Prahlada had this unshakable devotion to God, and his father was a demon, and he felt that no, I am the king, I am the Lord. Why should you have a devotion for Lord Vishnu, for Narayana? So he couldn't help chanting Lord Narayana's name, and then his father tortured him so many ways. He cried when the boy was thrown into the fire. So they had some special effects probably. And in those days it would have been simple compared to what we have today, but still, people would get swept up in the drama. It was beautiful, I'm sure. The scene changed. Lakshmi and Narayana were seen seated in Goloka. Narayana was worried about Prahlada. This scene too threw Sri Ramakrishna into an ecstatic mood. Of course, they're not plays, actually, they're musicals, what we would call today as musicals. There would be some talking, and then they would sing a song. And that tradition is going on today in Indian movies also. Even the secular movies, there's some talking, and then suddenly everyone breaks into a big musical number, right? After the performance, Girish conducted Sri Ramakrishna to his private room in the theater. He said to the master, "Would you care to see the farce Vibaha Vibhrata," which is the confusion of marriage? And Sri Ramakrishna is stunned. Oh no, why something like that after the life of Prahlada? I once said to the leader of a theatrical troupe, "End your performance with some religious talk. We have been listening to such wonderful spiritual conversation, and now to see the confusion of marriage? A worldly topic. We should become our old selves again. We should return to our old mood." So Girish doesn't yet fully get it. On the one hand, he's this gifted poet and playwright, but then he doesn't understand. Offering to Sri Ramakrishna, now see the confusion of marriage. Maybe he thought, who knows what he thought. So Girish then asked him, "How did you like the performance?" "I found that it was God himself who was acting the different parts. Those who played the female parts seemed to me the direct embodiments of the blissful mother, and the cowherd boys of Goloka the embodiment of Narayana himself. It was God alone who had become all these. This is Sri Ramakrishna's experience all the time, actually, or most of the time. His experience that actually everything is divinity. The divine has become everything. But this was heightened in this kind of a play where the actors are actually playing divine roles. So he would see it's just God playing. This whole life is just God playing, Mother playing. Seems so painful. Just Mother playing. All the different actors, they're just different forms of Mother playing. But Swami Vivekananda also liked this attitude of, how do we look on this world? And there's the different attitudes. There's the staunch Vedantic attitude that actually it's unreal. Only Brahman is real, and this world is unreal. Or at the very least, it's anitya. It's very impermanent. So I won't pay any attention to it. Only Brahman is real. But we have our lives. How do we say it's unreal when all these things are happening? So often I feel a more satisfying way to look on this world is as a play. It's a divine play. All right, sometimes it's a painful play, but it's a play of Mother. And we are also none other than Mother's embodiments in the play. And what happens when the play is over? The curtain falls, and the actors go back into the room, and they all say, how well you played your role. Yes, and you really did a good job. You looked so like you were suffering so much. Oh yes, everybody was weeping when I played that role. It was just a play.
There's a great interaction with Swami Turiyananda and Ramakrishna,
Uh-huh.
where he says, "Why is there so much suffering?"
Yeah.
And of course, says it's play, and then he quotes Aesop fables. He says, "Well, this play is our death." And
Was that a quote from Aesop's Fables?
Yeah, a boy goes by and throws rocks into the lake each day,
Uh-huh.
and it's destroying the kingdom of frogs at the bottom of it.
Right.
So they go to the king frog, and he goes to the surface and tells the boy, "Can you stop?"
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, I'm just playing." And he says, "But your play is our death."
I didn't know this was an Aesop's fable that he's quoting.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Do you know what he's talking about, this incident? That Sri Ramakrishna, he's describing this world as play, it's Mother's play. And then Hari Maharaj, as a young boy, it's in the gospel actually, he says, but this play of God is our death. And I didn't know, this is a brilliant addition to this point. This is from Aesop's Fables.
Yeah.
That's really good,
Yeah.
thank you.
And then Ramakrishna answers, of course,
Yeah.
"Please tell me who you are."
Yeah, tell me who you are. I see that it is Mother who has become everything and all this and everyone. So it's Mother playing.
So who was? Tell me who you are.
Swami Turiyananda, Hari Maharaj.
Thakur answered him, "Tell me who you are. It's your play. You are."
In other words, right. In other words, you are not this limited individual called Hari. You are a manifestation of divinity. You are Divine Mother herself playing in this play. In camp, why is it not coming? Northern California, where Swamiji went camping? Camp Taylor. Swamiji went camping with some of his intimate disciples and friends in 1900 after visiting Southern California and San Francisco. They went north of San Francisco. Before there was a Golden Gate Bridge, they had to take a train and a ferry and another train. And they went to a place called Camp Taylor, where they set up camp, literally with tents. There was at the place a stove, a wood stove that you could cook on. So they cooked and they camped, and they meditated beside the stream and everything. And one day one of the students said, "This world is an old schoolhouse where we come to learn our lessons." And that's one attitude. And in fact, sometimes Swami Vivekananda seems to suggest that we come here, it's like a gymnasium and we come to get strong, or sometimes he seems to suggest it. But this time Swamiji was not in that mood. He said, "Who told you that?" So then he said, no, I don't think it's a schoolhouse. What is it then, Swamiji? It's a circus. And we are clowns tumbling. It's a circus. You see a circus? It's all just like a play. It's a clowns tumbling. And then one of the students asked, well, why do we tumble, Swamiji? Because we want to. When we've had enough, we'll stop. So that's another way to look at it. We're clowns tumbling in a circus. Mother's circus. Mother's madhouse, oftentimes it seems like. But if we have a choice, we can weep or we can laugh. Sometimes it's better to laugh. Sometimes we have to weep when we see so much suffering. But when the craziness comes in our own life, better if we can laugh rather than weep. Okay. There are signs by which you can know whether a person has truly seen God. One of these is joy. There is no hesitancy in him. He is like the ocean. The waves and sounds are on the surface. Below are profound depths. The person who has seen God behaves sometimes like a madman, sometimes like a ghoul without any feeling of purity or impurity, sometimes like an inert thing, remaining speechless because he sees God within and without, sometimes like a child, without any attachment, wandering about unconcernedly with his cloth under his arm. He's describing himself, of course. He would walk, his arm, his cloth, he couldn't bear to stay anything tied, and the dhoti would be tied around, and at a certain point he would get sick of it and he would throw it off, and sitting there like a 5-year-old child or a 4-year-old child without any clothes on. And nobody would feel embarrassed. Anybody else, if any grown man is 48 years old, 47 years old, sitting there completely naked, we would feel very embarrassed. But somehow, because he was so much like a child, no one would feel any embarrassment. We just like being with a small child.
So, in the Bhagavad Gita, when Sri Krishna talks about state of prajna, like the man who reaches a goal acts in a very sattvic, pure way. He's always cool, focused, and how do they?
That's a great question. What do you think? It's a great question. Who can answer?
So it's about what is inside. Inside they are always Tita Pragya, but on the outside, you might see something, but from inside they are always Tita Pragya.
Okay.
I think there is an answer in the second chapter itself, Arjun. I think what's day for worldly people is night for Sthita Prajna and vice versa. So what is normal accepted behavior for worldly people might not be the same for the realized soul. And so it might sound that it is different, but I think that's probably we just need a different lens to look at it.
Here itself, Thakur says about that depth on the inside, just before you read it.
Right.
That is where the Sthita Pragya lies.
Yes. He's describing a state, really he's describing his own state, which is this kind of state of madness of love, almost, which he tends to say very few people, Sthita Prajna, the person of steady wisdom who attains that wisdom, that is, we also can attain to that. But this state of, he used to say, there's, after Bhava, this intense love of God, comes Mahabhava and Prema. And only very rare souls who come as world teachers, as great souls, can attain that kind of state of Mahabhava and Prema. And in Sri Ramakrishna's case, he went beyond the ordinary. It was not just an illumined soul, an ordinary illumined soul. He attained to this Mahabhava, this prema, this intense love where everything is forgotten and that kind of madness can come. I mean, we know from his life, all these things have been, he went through all these states. Many people thought he was insane, actually. They didn't recognize that he was a God man, as it were, but they thought he was crazy. And, that time when there was another wandering monk who came to Dakshineshwar, and he was dirty and unkempt, and he looked very odd, and they wouldn't let him eat in the guest house of the temple. Didn't bother him a bit. He went to where the leaf plates were thrown out and the dogs were eating the scraps of food, and he went there and he pushed aside a dog and he took some himself from that pile of garbage. So that kind of not discriminating between holy and unholy. He was some kind of rare illumined soul who didn't distinguish anything pure and impure. It was all divine, all divinity.
And this Mahabhava, as you said, is also with the gopis of Krishna, right?
Yeah.
They're also like mad.
Yeah. They
Leaving
had
their
that.
husbands and coming to Krishna. Yes,
That's that Mahabhava. Yes. A great question. Yeah. Okay, he goes a little further. Again, in the mood of a child, he acts in different ways. Sometimes like a boy, indulging in frivolity. Sometimes like a young man, working and teaching with the strength of a lion. Then he tells us why we don't see God. We cannot see God on account of the ego. You cannot see the sun when a cloud rises in the sky. But that doesn't mean there is no sun. The sun is there just the same. But there is no harm in the ego of a child. On the contrary, this ego is helpful. Greens are bad for the stomach, but hinche is good. So hinche cannot properly be called greens. Sugar candy likewise cannot be classed with other sweets. Other sweets are injurious to the health, but not sugar candy. There's a question. I don't know. We don't turn to the gospel for medical advice. We turn to the gospel for spiritual teaching. So things like medical, those are according to time and place. Those we understand. That doesn't mean that we should now go and eat lots of sugar candy. It was believed, and perhaps it reduces acidity in the stomach. If you have an acid stomach, you drink some sugar candy water. It supposedly reduces the acidity. Now we have other medicines for that. So I don't know if we need to take it literally. That, we should go eat sugar candy.
That works for me.
It works for you. Okay. And whether greens are bad for the stomach, greens don't hurt my stomach. I love greens. So
I follow the gospel very closely.
But we have to understand when he's talking, he's using these as examples to teach us that the ego of a child is not harmful. He used to use this to ripen our ego. So the unripe ego is one who says, don't you know who I am? I am Swami Mahayogananda. I am a monk of the order. You didn't touch my feet? What? How dare you? That would be the monk's ego of pride of a monk. And but the ego would be ripening it. I am a child of God. I am just like everybody else. I'm a humble child of God, and all I want is to serve Him. That's the ego of a devotee, ego of a ripe ego. So Sri Ramakrishna encourages us to ripen our ego. To transcend this sense of I is practically impossible. It happens in nirvikalpa samadhi. Will we have nirvikalpa samadhi? Mother knows, but it doesn't seem to happen too often. So, but we ripen the ego, we ripen it, and as we're able to ripen it, we start to taste more joy, more peace in life. Absolutely, no doubt about it. The unripe ego actually makes us suffer. Yeah. So I said to Keshav, if I tell you more than I have already said, you won't be able to keep your organization together. That frightened him. Then I said to him, there is no harm in the ego of a child or the ego of a servant. Keshav, Keshav is an interesting question because he was a deeply spiritual man, and Sri Ramakrishna recognized his spirituality. He was an advanced soul. Of the whole group of Keshav and all his disciples and devotees who were meditating together, Sri Ramakrishna saw he's the only one actually who's really meditating, who's gone deep. He plunged deep into meditation. So he recognized and appreciated his genuine spirituality. But he also had this desire to make an organization and to do social reform. And also, he used to say a little desire for name and fame was still there. So those things hampered him a little bit. And Sri Ramakrishna was teaching him and said, well, if I tell you more, then you won't be able to keep your organization together. Because if you go beyond the sense of I, then making an organization, he wouldn't be able to do it. So he said, then don't, then stop here, because he wanted to keep that organization. So then Sri Ramakrishna says, I'm not asking you to get rid of your ego altogether. I'm asking you to ripen it. The ego of a devotee, the ego of a child. One who has seen God finds that God alone has become the world and all its living beings. It is he or she who has become all. Such a person is called a superior devotee. Girish smiling. Yes, God is everything. But the devotee keeps a trace of ego. That is not harmful. Sri Ramakrishna smiling. Yes, there is no harm in that. That trace of ego is kept in order to enjoy God. You can enjoy divine bliss only when you make a distinction between yourself and God. The distinction between the servant and the master. An interesting point. The idea, I don't want to become sugar, I want to taste sugar. There is also the devotee of the mediocre class. He sees that God dwells in all beings as their inner guide. But the inferior devotee says, God exists. He is up there. That is to say, beyond the sky. And all laugh. Yes, that's the original attitude, the sort of the childish attitude. Your God is up there somewhere in heaven, and we're down here on earth, and God is controlling things from up there. So, oh Lord, we look up when we it's even now people, the Christians maybe more, no? Christians and Muslims, but oh Lord, up there, come down. But there's this idea of higher and lower is there. We want to raise our minds, and so we even think in a very physical way, from the lower to the higher. We want to go higher. So it's not entirely wrong exactly, but it's a childish kind of, not childlike, but childish conception, kindergarten of religion. So Sri Ramakrishna used to note these, and Sri Krishna tells us in the Gita that all who worship God, all who turn to God, are good. They are all noble. Even those who are turning to God because they want money, even they are good. There's some people they want money. They won't turn to God for it. They'll just plunder their neighbor's wealth, or they cheat and steal and do whatever they can do to get money. But some people, they turn to God and they pray to God for money. That's a noble. That's a noble way to seek wealth. If you want wealth, seek to take God's help. Why not? They're all noble. But the wise devotee who knows that God is within and just simply worships for the sake of worshiping, that's the most dear. Sri Krishna says, such a devotee I regard as my own self. So, but he used to say this is the last stage in spiritual life, when we find that God has become everything, when we see Everything is divine. For the earlier stages, we feel God is within, as the inner guide, as you say here, the Antaryaman. Such a devotee, mediocre, actually, he's being a little harsh here. He sees that God dwells in all beings as their inner guide. And that itself is quite an accomplishment, to see and remember that the divine exists in all beings as their inner guide. That's wonderful. But Sri Ramakrishna is always saying, go forward. Beyond the sandalwood forest, there's the gold mine, and there's the copper mine, the silver mine, the gold mine, the diamond mine. Go forward. When I saw the cowherd boys of Goloka in your performance, I felt that God has become all. He who has seen God knows truly that God alone is the doer. It is He who does everything. Sri Ramakrishna had a pretty uncompromising view about this, that God is the doer, and that actually we don't do. We think we do, but actually we don't do anything. And yet it's very hard to go beyond the idea that we do. And then he says in one place, God himself or God herself has put in us this idea of agency, so that otherwise sin would increase in the world. If we think God is doing everything, then we get confused and do all kinds of wicked things. The one who knows that God is the only doer cannot take a false step, cannot do any wicked action. So how do you explain it? It's difficult to understand. If God is the only doer, how do you explain people doing wrong things? I think it's from different levels, different standpoints. From our very limited standpoint, we see so many wrong things and we see so much suffering. From the highest standpoint, when we reach to that plane, then everything is the play of the divine. So Girish says, Sir, I know truly that it is God who does everything. But we wonder if he has already given his power of attorney to Sri Ramakrishna. I wonder if he has already done that. In which case, then he's already attained a fairly high state. Sri Ramakrishna says, I say, O mother, I am the machine and you are the operator. I am inert and you make me conscious. I do as you make me do. I speak as you make me speak. But the ignorant say, I am partly responsible and God is partly responsible. The conversation goes on. Girish, Sir, I am not really doing anything. Why should I bother about work at all? A good question. If God is doing everything, I'm not doing anything, so why should I work? No, work is good. When the ground is well cultivated and cleared of stones and pebbles, whatever you plant will grow. But one should work without any personal motive. What's he talking about here? The ground is well cultivated and cleared of pebbles.
Bias, hatred, and everything removed.
Huh?
Becoming more spiritual.
The mind is well laid out. I mean, idle mind is the devil's workshop. We think of unnecessary things, right?
He says right after he says work is good. Girish is trying to get out of doing work. He wants to quit his job. He wants to quit writing plays. And Sri Ramakrishna says, no, work is good. When the ground is well cultivated and cleared of stones and pebbles, whatever you plant will grow. Why is he saying that here? What do you think?
Maybe you're not in a state of, every karma that you do, you're basically attributing to God.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically kind of your mindset is like that, and okay, he's not kind of doing it for doing sake, for money or whatever, fame, or right. He's just maybe attributing that also to God. That this is what I'm doing.
That's called the practice of Karma yoga. Karma yoga. So here, so Sri Ramakrishna, when he uses the word karma yoga, he discourages it because he's talking about the path of rituals. But here, he's suggesting you should work. Why? Because you will purify yourself. As if you offer all your work to God, as you work with others, you learn where your angularities are, and you start to round them. You start to smooth them. So the ground is well cultivated and cleared of stones and pebbles. Then the plant will grow. So it seems that's what strikes me, that he's actually supporting the idea, Swami Vivekananda's idea of karma yoga, which is action without any desire for the fruits. Because right after this he says, but one should work without any personal motive. So there it is. He says, this work without personal motive, doing it as an offering, trying to feel that I am an instrument of God, this actually clears the ground of stones and pebbles, clears the field, and the field becomes well cultivated, and we get a good crop. What's the crop? Progress in spiritual life, maybe. Vision of God, joy, attaining our birthright, our inheritance, gaining our kingdom. Okay, maybe that's a good place to stop. Oh, let's finish Girish's little conversation here. Well, I don't know if we're going to get there. The conversation goes on a long time. Okay, one more. There are two types of Paramahamsas, the Jnani and the Premi. Oh, maybe here's a little answer to your question. Let's see. There's the Jnani and the Premi, two types of Paramahamsas. The Jnani is self-centered. He feels that it is enough to have knowledge for his own self. The Premi, like Shukadeva, after attaining his own realization, teaches human beings. Some eat mangoes and wipe off all traces from their mouths, but some share their mangoes with others. Spades and baskets are needed to dig a well. After the digging is over, some throw the spades and baskets into the well, but others put them away, for a neighbor may use them. Shukadeva and a few others kept the spades and baskets for the benefit of others. To Girish, you should do the same. Interesting. I'd be surprised to, after working so hard to dig a well, finally the water is flowing and got a well. I guess he must have seen it in the village that some people say, oh, enough of that. I don't want to dig any more wells. Throw the implements right into the well. But ordinarily we would think that we would save it for others. But he must have seen it. Otherwise he wouldn't say that.
Maybe capitalistic of America, right? So you patent that thing and now you make money off it, right? Nobody else can use it.
I thought that the 4 parts, right, were the same.
The four what?
The 4 yoga,
Uh-huh.
Jnana yoga, Bhakti yoga,
Yeah.
they're the same. Here, Sri Krishna is clearly endorsing one over the other.
Well, it seems here he's not talking exactly about yogas. They're not the same, but you mean they're equally efficacious. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Because they obviously have different practices,
yeah,
and all that, but they're equally paths to the divine. Well, he's talking about perhaps just different stages of realization. It looks like, after all, I thought maybe he's talking about. It looks like rather he's talking about different stages. The one who is satisfied to have attained illumination himself or herself and doesn't care about others. Well, other people that I've attained knowledge of God. What do I care about others? But there are other people who say, I have. Like the story, Sri Ramakrishna's story of the garden and the wall. And some friends come to the garden and there's a big wall around it. And they can hear faintly some noises, some party or something's going on. They go all around, they can't find a way in. So somehow they make a ladder or somehow the first friend gets to the top of the wall. And the friends below, they're waiting to find out what's in the wall, what's in the garden, tell us. And he gives a shout of joy and he jumps in. he forgets all about his friends. He just jumps in, and they look at each other like, oh, well, okay, let's go. And the next one climbs up. And he also, seeing the garden, he gives a shout of joy and he jumps in and joins the festivities inside. And finally there's one left, and he's wondering, what is it? What is it? So he climbs up, and seeing the mart of joy in that garden, he's about to do exactly the same and jump in. And then he thinks, wait, I have my other friends, I have my family. They also should know about this. So he climbs back down, and he goes and he calls everybody, says, come, come, come see the fun. So this first kind of devotee is like Sri Ramakrishna saying, forgets about everybody else and just goes for liberation. And the second is like the Buddhist ideal of the bodhisattva. It's actually a beautiful ideal, the bodhisattva ideal. Are you familiar with it? The bodhisattva takes a vow. It's in the Mahayana school of Buddhism. The seekers, we can't say seekers of God, but seekers of illumination, of enlightenment in the Buddha's path, they take a vow to be a bodhisattva, which means they will not enter nirvana. They will not enter final illumination until everybody has attained illumination. So it's a vow of tremendous unselfishness. Yes, we're working for illumination, but I vow not to enter nirvana until all beings have attained nirvana. It's a kind of paradoxical vow because they say sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. How can you save numberless beings? And yet, so they make this kind of commitment.
We want to take birth again and again.
Right. They even to that extent. Though one could say that, like Swami Vivekananda, I may find it good to give up my body, but I shall not cease to work. I will work until all know that they are one with God. So that idea is also there.
I think similar with the monks of the Ramakrishna order themselves, right?
Well, we don't have we don't.
No,
have
I meant sorry about the story of this boy who comes back and tells others to come,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, you all could be in Himalayas doing your own meditation and striving for your own liberation, but you will live with us and suffer the politics and then organizational things because you want to take us along, right?
But we don't suffer too much.
I'm sure you'd rather be, doing other things.
No, it is also a joy, there's a joy in satsang and talking about the divine. It's also a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
Yes. We do have those types, also some yogi types in our order that go off and wander about for a while, and Naramada Parikrama and other things like that. So, good. Well, thank you for coming to listen and talk about Sri Ramakrishna and his teachings. It's a beautiful, inspiring study.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj. When you say something that you relate to so many things, that's why we understand it better, at least me.
Yeah, we like the Bhagavata scholar who used to go to the king. Sri Ramakrishna tells that story, and he would explain the holy book. And at the end of his explanation, he would say, "Oh king, have you understood?" And the king would always say, "You had better understand it yourself first." And the Pandit would go home scratching his head. What a strange answer of the king. He's asking me, I'm explaining everything to him and asking if he's understood, and he's asking me if I've understood. So anyhow, the classes would continue, and every time this thing, but he was a sincere seeker also. And one day he understood. He had this awakening, and he realized that all life is meaningless, and that God is the only thing of any importance. And he renounced his home and became a monk, and went off to wander and find God in the Himalayas. But before he left, he asked a friend to go to the king with this message. "Yes, O king, now I have understood." So that's the Sri Ramakrishna story. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampadhrita Vingraham Ishavataram Parameshu Nidham Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namah. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, thank you. Thank you, and thank you for those who joined us online also. See you soon. I'll be going to Tennessee tomorrow morning. Be back on Sunday the 16th. We'll have, I put something on the schedule, I think reading and discussion for Seekers of God. Monday night we'll have Upanishadic meditation. Tuesday night there'll be a talk on mission joy. And then Wednesday I